Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a really important topic, how to train your brain to think in English. And I think the very first thing we should talk about is why it even matters. Like, why should someone care about thinking in English instead of just translating from their native language?
Exactly. That's such a good starting point because most learners don't realize how much translation slows them down. Think about it. You're having a conversation in English, but in your head, you're hearing the question, then translating it into your own language, then thinking of the answer in your own language, and then trying to translate it back into English before you speak. That's a lot of steps, right?
Oh, totally. It's like trying to run a race, but stopping at every step to tie your shoes again and again. You can still get to the finish line, but it takes much longer, and you're exhausted by the end.
Yes. And the funny thing is, sometimes you lose the meaning completely. Like, I remember one of my students wanted to say, "I'm excited to meet you," but she translated directly from her language and it came out as, "I'm nervous to face you." The poor girl didn't mean that at all, but the translation just messed up her real intention.
That's a perfect example. And you know what, listeners? I want you to think about your own experience. Have you ever had that awkward moment when you translated word for word and the other person just gave you a confused look? If yes, you know exactly why this matters. Thinking directly in English helps you avoid those embarrassing moments because you're not relying on your first language as a middle step.
Right. Another thing is speed. Imagine you're at work, in a meeting, and your boss asks for your opinion. If you need to translate every single word in your head before you speak, you might miss your chance. The conversation moves on, and you're still stuck trying to find the perfect translation.
Exactly. And the same happens in casual conversations, too. Like when you're hanging out with friends, you don't want to pause for 5 seconds every time you answer. People expect quick, natural responses. And that's what thinking in English gives you, fluency and speed.
There's also something deeper here. When you think in English, you don't just speak faster, you actually start to understand the culture behind the language. Because language isn't just words, it's also the way people express feelings, the way they see the world.
I love that point. For example, in English, when someone says, "What's up?" they don't literally want to know what is physically above your head. It's just a casual way of saying, "How are you?" If you're stuck in translation mode, you might hear that and start looking up at the ceiling, which would be funny but also kind of awkward.
Oh, yes, I've seen that happen. One student once replied, "The sky is up." And the whole class laughed. Not because she wasn't smart, she was brilliant, but because she was still in translation mode. Thinking directly in English helps you catch these expressions and respond naturally.
And the truth is, every fluent speaker you admire, whether it's someone on YouTube, a teacher, or even a friend, has trained their brain to think directly in English. That's why they sound smooth and confident. It's not magic, it's practice.
I also want to point out that thinking in English makes listening easier too. If you're always translating in your head while listening, your brain has to do double the work. Understand the English words, then convert them. That's why learners often say English native speakers talk too fast. It's not that the English is impossible, it's the translation that's slowing you down.
Yes, yes, yes. Let's give a little test to our listeners. If you're listening right now, I want you to imagine this. Someone says to you, "How's it going?" If your brain first translates it into your language, then thinks of an answer like, "I am fine" in your language, and then translates it back to English, you'll take about 3 seconds or more before you reply. But if you think in English, the answer, "I'm good, thanks, how about you?" comes out instantly. That's the difference.
That's a really good exercise. Listeners, you can even pause this episode and practice right now. Ask yourself a simple question like, "What time is it?" and try to answer in English immediately without translation. If you find it hard, don't worry. That's normal. It just means your brain is still wired to your first language, and that's exactly what we're going to fix together.
All right, so now that we've talked about why thinking in English matters, let's move on to the next step, how to actually start doing it. And here's the secret. You don't need to begin with big, complicated ideas. You start small with the everyday words that surround you.
Yes, and I think this is where a lot of learners make a mistake. They try to think in English about politics, science, or deep philosophy right away. But the truth is, your brain needs simple training first. You don't go to the gym for the first time and try to lift 200 pounds. You start with small weights. Same with English. Start with easy words.
Exactly. Let's give a few examples. Right now, listeners, just look around you. Maybe you see a table, a chair, a window, your phone, maybe a cup of coffee or tea. Instead of naming them in your native language, try saying them in English in your head. Table, chair, window, phone, cup. That's it.
I actually did this myself when I was learning Spanish. Every time I saw something simple, like door or pen, I forced myself to say the Spanish word in my mind. At first, it felt awkward, but after a few weeks, it became automatic. And that's the goal. You want your brain to skip your first language completely.
That's such a great point. It reminds me of one of my students who started labeling things in her house with sticky notes. She put mirror on her mirror, refrigerator on her fridge, light switch on the switch. She said the first week was kind of funny because her whole house looked like an English classroom, but it really worked. Every time she used an object, her brain connected it directly to the English word.
That's a brilliant technique. And it's fun too, because you're turning your environment into a living dictionary. You don't need to sit down with a big textbook. You just live your life, but in English.
Yes, and here's a simple challenge for our listeners. Right after this episode, I want you to pick 5 objects you use every day. Your phone, your keys, your shoes, your door, your bed, and practice saying them in English every time you use them. Touch your shoes and think shoes. Pick up your keys and think keys. This habit rewires your brain slowly but surely.
And here's another trick. Don't just say the nouns. Try to add verbs and adjectives. For example, instead of just thinking cup, think hot cup or I'm drinking from the cup. Instead of just door, think I'm opening the door or the door is closed. You're building small sentences, and that's powerful.
Oh, that's really good because when you build short sentences, you start thinking in patterns, not just isolated words. And patterns are what make speaking fluent.
Exactly. Let me share a quick story. One of my students used to commute every day by bus. She decided to use that 30-minute ride as her English practice time. She looked at people around her and made simple sentences in her head. The man is reading a newspaper. The woman is talking on the phone. The bus is moving fast. She wasn't speaking out loud, just silently thinking in English. And after 2 months, her fluency improved dramatically.
I love that story because it shows you don't need special study time to train your brain. You can use daily life as your classroom. Walking, cooking, shopping, all of these are perfect chances to think in English with small words and sentences.
Absolutely. And I know some listeners might be thinking, but what if I don't know the English word for something? That's okay. Don't stress. Use the words you do know. For example, if you don't know the word for ceiling, just say the top of the room. It's not perfect, but it keeps you in English mode instead of running back to your native language.
That's such an important point. Perfection is not the goal here. The goal is to stay in English. Even if you have to describe something in a simple way, you're still training your brain to think without translating.
Yes, and actually, this strategy makes you more creative with language. Think about kids. They don't know every word. If they don't know refrigerator, they'll say, the big cold box. And guess what? People still understand them. You can do the same in English while you're learning.
That's brilliant. And it makes learning more fun, too. Instead of worrying about the perfect word, you're practicing flexibility. And flexibility is the secret weapon of fluent speakers.
I want to turn this into a little audience question. Listeners,
Think about your kitchen right now. How many objects can you name in English without translating? Refrigerator, sink, stove, spoon, plate, knife, pan. If you get stuck, that's your homework. Look it up once, and next time you'll remember it instantly.
That's a great activity. You could do the same with your bedroom, your bathroom, your office. Make little English zones in your brain by focusing on one space at a time.
And here's another small but powerful exercise. Next time you're cooking, try narrating the steps in your head in English. I'm cutting the tomato. I'm boiling water. I'm adding salt. This way, you're turning ordinary actions into English practice.
Yes, and if you keep doing that every day, after a while your brain will automatically choose English without you even noticing. That's when you know the magic is happening. You're starting to think in English.
And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Start with a few words, then add short phrases, then build small sentences. Over time, those little steps grow into natural fluency.
So now we've talked about why thinking in English matters and how to start small with everyday words. But here's where things really get interesting, using real-life situations to practice. Because, honestly, words on their own are good, but situations give them life.
Yes, that's where fluency really grows. You see, the brain learns faster when something feels real, not abstract. If you just memorized lists of vocabulary, you'll forget them quickly. But if you imagine yourself in a situation like ordering coffee, buying groceries, or asking for directions, suddenly those words and phrases stick.
Exactly. And the best part is, you don't even need to be in an English-speaking country to do this. You can create little role plays in your head. For example, picture yourself at a cafe. Instead of translating, think in English. Good morning. Can I have a latte, please? Yes, with sugar. Thank you so much. You're rehearsing a real situation.
That's a fantastic exercise. I remember one learner who practiced exactly like that. Every day, she pretended to order coffee in English while making her breakfast at home. And when she finally visited an English-speaking country, she didn't freeze up at the cafe. She was ready because she had already practiced the dialogue in her head many times.
That's so powerful. It's like mental training for athletes. Basketball players visualize making shots before the game. Musicians imagine playing their instruments before a concert. Language learners can do the same. Visualize conversations before they happen.
And you know what else? This type of practice also helps you deal with surprises. Because in real conversations, things don't always go exactly as you expect. If you've trained your brain in many small scenarios, you'll be more flexible.
That's true. Let's give an example. Imagine you're at the supermarket and you want to ask an employee, "Where is the bread?" But instead of answering directly, they say, "Oh, we moved it to aisle 5 near the dairy section." If you only memorize the phrase, "Where is the bread?" you might panic. But if you practiced full situations in your head, you'll be ready to handle the reply naturally.
Exactly. So here's a fun challenge for our listeners. Take one routine from your day, maybe shopping, maybe taking the bus, maybe going to the doctor, and play it out in English in your mind. Imagine both sides of the conversation. Pretend to be the other person, too. Hi, how can I help you? I'd like a bus ticket, please. Sure, where to? You're building real conversation skills, not just vocabulary.
That's brilliant. And actually, one of my favorite tricks is to practice with yourself out loud, not just in your head. I know it might feel silly, but talking to yourself is one of the fastest ways to train your brain. For example, if you're cooking dinner, you could say out loud, "I'm chopping the onion. Now I'm adding salt. The pasta is boiling." It feels like real communication, even if no one's around.
I love that. I used to do that when I was learning French. I would walk around the house saying things like, I'm opening the window, I'm turning on the light. At first, I felt ridiculous, but it worked wonders. And when I actually had to speak French with someone, the words came out so much faster.
And the good thing is, no one needs to hear you if you feel shy. You can practice quietly or even whisper. The key is to connect actions with English sentences.
Another amazing practice is what I call mini dialogues. Let's say you're about to go to a restaurant. Before you even leave, imagine the whole conversation. Good evening, I have a reservation. For how many people? For 2, please. Would you like to sit inside or outside? By the time you actually go, your brain is already prepared.
That's so true. And if listeners are worried about not knowing every possible phrase, don't be. You don't need to cover every detail. Start with the basics, and as you experience more, you'll naturally add new vocabulary to your mini dialogues.
Right. And here's something interesting. Sometimes your imagined dialogues will be a little different from real life, and that's fine. What matters is that you're keeping your brain in English mode. That practice builds confidence, so even when the real conversation surprises you, you don't freeze.
Let's involve the audience here. Imagine right now that you're at a clothing store. Someone asks you, "Can I help you?" What would you say in English? Maybe, "Yes, I'm looking for a jacket," or "No, thank you, I'm just browsing." Can you answer instantly in English, or do you stop and translate? That little test shows how ready your brain is to think in English.
That's a great test. And listeners, if you hesitated or translated, don't worry. That just means you need more practice with real-life situations. The good news is you can practice anywhere, anytime. Standing in line, waiting at the bus stop, even brushing your teeth. You can be rehearsing English dialogues in your head.
Absolutely. And here's one final tip for this section. Don't just practice what you would say, also practice what the other person might say. That way, you're not shocked when someone answers in a way you didn't expect. For example, if you ask, "Can I have a coffee?" the barista might reply, "Sure, do you want milk with that?" Practicing both sides prepares you for real interactions.
Yes, and actually, that's when English starts feeling natural, when you can imagine both roles in a conversation. You're not just memorizing lines, you're creating a flow, and that flow is exactly what fluency feels like.
That's the beauty of real-life practice. It transforms English from something you study into something you live. And the more you live it, the faster your brain learns to think in it.
So we've already talked about why thinking in English matters, how to start small with everyday words, and how to practice in real-life situations. Now comes one of the most powerful steps, immersion. And by immersion, I mean surrounding yourself with English through listening and speaking as much as possible.
Yes, and before our listeners panic, immersion doesn't mean you need to move to London, New York, or Sydney. It means creating an English environment right where you are. You don't have to travel. You can bring English into your daily life through sound, speech, and interaction.
Exactly. Let's start with listening. The human brain is designed to learn language by hearing it over and over. Think about how babies learn. They don't sit with grammar books. They just listen to their parents all day long until the sounds, patterns, and meanings become clear. You can do the same with English by listening constantly.
Right. And there are so many fun ways to do it. Podcasts, YouTube videos, movies, TV series, audiobooks, even songs. The key is to pick content that you enjoy so it doesn't feel like homework. If you love cooking, watch cooking shows in English. If you love sports, follow sports commentary in English. That way, your brain connects English with things you already like.
Yes, and here's something important. Don't worry about understanding every single word. Sometimes learners give up because they think, "Oh, I didn't catch 30% of what was said." But that's normal. Even native speakers don't catch every word in every situation. The point is to get the general meaning and let your brain absorb the rhythm and patterns.
Absolutely. I remember when I first started learning Italian, I would listen to Italian radio stations while driving. At first, I understood almost nothing. But after weeks of listening daily, suddenly I began catching phrases and expressions I'd heard many times. My brain started piecing things together naturally.
That's exactly how immersion works. The repetition creates recognition. And one day, without realizing it, you start thinking in those phrases. That's why I always encourage learners to listen every single day, even just 10 or 15 minutes while you're cooking, cleaning, or walking.
And speaking is just as important as listening. A lot of learners say, but I don't have anyone to talk to in English. And I get that, but here's the truth. You can create speaking opportunities even without a partner.
Yes, that's so true. You can record yourself speaking. Pick a topic like your day, your plans, your favorite movie, and just talk for 2 minutes into your phone. Then listen back. At first, it might feel strange, but it helps you notice your mistakes and also shows you how much progress you're making.
That's a powerful tip. And if you want interaction, there are language exchange apps and online communities where you can find speaking partners. You don't need to wait for a classroom. You can connect with people around the world who want to practice English with you.
And let's not forget shadowing. For our listeners who don't know, shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker and repeat what they say at almost the same time, like an echo. Is one of the best ways to train your brain to think in English because you're copying the rhythm, pronunciation, and speed.
Yes, I used to do that with TED Talks. I'd play a short clip, then repeat along with the speaker. At first, I stumbled a lot, but over time, my mouth started moving faster, and my brain followed. It's like singing along to your favorite song. You don't translate, you just sing.
That's such a great comparison. Singing is another underrated method. If you sing along with English songs, you're training your pronunciation, rhythm, and memory all at once. Plus, it's fun.
And fun is important because if immersion feels boring, you won't stick with it. Listeners, ask yourself, what do you already enjoy? Movies, podcasts, music, YouTube, video games? Choose English versions of those. That way, you'll keep going naturally.
Exactly. And here's a challenge for our audience. For the next 7 days, replace one small part of your daily media with English. If you normally watch the news in your native language, watch it in English. If you scroll social media, follow at least 3 English-speaking creators. If you usually listen to local radio, try an English podcast instead.
That's a great challenge. And to add to that, try to speak at least once a day in English, even if it's just a 1-minute monologue while brushing your teeth. Say what you're doing or talk about your plan for the day. Today I'm going to work. After work, I'll meet my friend. Later, I'll watch a movie. These little speaking habits add up.
Definitely. And remember, consistency beats intensity. It's better to listen for 15 minutes every day than for 2 hours only once a week. Your brain learns best with daily exposure, even in small doses.
Yes, that's the secret to immersion. It's not about cramming, it's about living with the language. If English becomes part of your daily life, your brain starts treating it as normal, not foreign. And that's when you begin to think in it naturally.
One more quick tip. Change your phone settings or computer settings to English. It forces your brain to interact with English every time you use technology. At first, it feels weird, but very soon it becomes natural.
I did that with my phone in French. Suddenly, everyday words like settings, calendar, notifications became part of my vocabulary without me even studying them. It's passive immersion that works.
That's brilliant. And it proves you don't need extra time. Just small changes in your environment can give you extra English exposure.
So, to sum up this step, immersion means filling your day with English, listening to it, speaking it, repeating it, living it. The more you surround yourself with the language, the faster your brain will start thinking in it.
So far, we've covered why thinking in English matters, how to start small, how to practice with real-life situations, and how to immerse yourself with listening and speaking. Now comes maybe the hardest but most important part. Building confidence and staying consistent.
Yes, because honestly, you can know all the tips and tricks, but if you don't believe in yourself, or if you quit after a week, nothing changes. Confidence and consistency are what transform learning from a short project into a real lifestyle.
Exactly. Let's start with confidence. One of the biggest reasons people hesitate to speak in English is fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of sounding silly, fear of people judging them. And I always tell my students, mistakes are not failures, they're proof that you're learning.
That's so true. Think about kids again. When children learn to talk, they say things wrong all the time. They mix up grammar, they forget words, they invent funny sentences, but no one laughs at them. They just keep practicing, and soon they become fluent. Why should adults be any different?
Exactly. But adults often feel embarrassed. I remember one student who was terrified of speaking in class. She said, "I don't want to open my mouth because my accent is bad." And I asked her, "Do you like when foreigners try to speak your language?" She said yes. So I told her, "That's how people feel about you. They're happy you're trying." That changed her perspective.
That's a powerful story, and I think our listeners need to hear this. Having an accent is not a problem. An accent shows your unique story. It means you already speak at least 2 languages. That's something to be proud of, not ashamed of.
Yes. And here's a mindset shift that can help. Instead of thinking, what if I make a mistake? Ask yourself, what if I miss an opportunity by staying silent? Because silence teaches you nothing, but mistakes teach you everything.
I love that. And to build confidence, you don't have to start with big conversations. You can start small, talking to yourself, recording your voice, practicing short dialogues. The more you practice in low-pressure situations, the easier it becomes in real conversations.
That's right. Confidence is like a muscle. You build it by using it. Every time you speak, even if it's just a little, you get stronger. And over time, those little efforts turn into real fluency.
Now, let's talk about consistency, because this is where many learners struggle. People get excited in the beginning, they study for 2 hours a day for 1 week, and then they stop. But language learning is not about speed, it's about habits.
Yes, it's like going to the gym. If you go for 5 hours one day and never again, nothing changes. But if you go for 20 minutes every day, your body transforms. The same is true with English. Short, regular practice beats long, irregular practice.
I agree. And here's a tip. Link English practice to an existing daily habit. For example, if you drink coffee every morning, listen to a 5-minute English podcast while you sip. If you brush your teeth at night, talk to yourself in English about your day. By connecting English to routines, it becomes automatic.
That's brilliant. And it takes away the excuse of, I don't have time. You don't need extra hours. You just need to use the time you already have more wisely.
Exactly. And here's another idea. Set small, realistic goals. Don't say, I want to be fluent in 6 months. That's too big. Instead, say, this week, I will practice 5 minutes every day. Or, today, I'll learn 3 new words and actually use them. Small goals keep you motivated because you can achieve them daily.
Yes, and success creates motivation. When you see progress, even small progress, you feel excited to continue. And that feeling builds consistency.
Another key is tracking your progress. Keep a journal where you write 1 or 2 sentences in English every day, or record a 1-minute audio diary. After a month, look back and compare. You'll be surprised at how much you've improved.
That's such good advice. And it makes learning visible. Sometimes progress feels invisible day to day, but when you look back over weeks or months, you realize how far you've come.
And of course, surround yourself with positivity. If you spend time with people who laugh at your mistakes, you'll lose confidence. But if you find supportive friends, teachers, or communities, you'll grow faster.
Yes, and our podcast listeners are part of that supportive community. We're here to encourage you, not judge you. Everyone listening is on the same journey to think in English, to speak fluently, and to stop translating.
That's right. So let's give our audience one final exercise for building confidence and consistency. For the next week, I want you to do 3 things. First, speak at least 1 sentence in English out loud every day. Second, listen to at least 5 minutes of English content daily. Third, write 1 short thought in English in a notebook.
That's perfect. Speak, listen, and write. If you do that consistently for just 7 days, you'll already feel a difference. And if you keep going, it will become a habit. And habits create fluency.
And remember, don't chase perfection. Chase progress. Every small step counts. Even mistakes are part of the journey. Stay patient, stay consistent, and trust the process.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, here's our call to action. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend who's learning English, and follow us for more tips. Together, we can keep building your fluency step by step.
Yes, and we'd also love to hear from you. What strategies are you using to train your brain to think in English? Send us your thoughts because your experience could inspire other learners too.
So keep practicing, stay consistent, and remember, you have everything it takes to think in English and speak fluently without translating.